Hello, this is Shiley from Sheepishly Made and MCS Livestock. Today we're going to learn how to wet felt. So I'm going to be using a bat today for my wet felting. You can also lay out your wool fibers in a design. Now here are my supplies. I have a bath towel laid out on my table. Then I have a couple layers of bubble wrap. You can also just use one layer if you prefer. And I have a hand towel and a couple different rollers. I have a 4-inch foam roller and then a homemade, it's a hard cardboard tube wrapped in plastic and taped up. The fabric mesh is what you use to lay over your wool. I have a little cloth I use sometimes to help soak up some extra water. And then I have my soap in my hot soapy water in a water bottle with some holes in it. You can also use like a spray bottle or something else to wet down your project. I use a unscented goat milk soap bar for my soap. So here's my bat. It's my full-size bat, so I'm actually going to tear it into a smaller piece. You can very gently do this to make the bat the size you want. I'm going to take a little bit more off the end, so I just have a small piece I'm going to be working with today. Now you just want to make sure that your bat, if you're using a bat, that it is even all the way across with the wool. If there's some thin spots, you might have to add back in some of that wool. Then we're going to take our fabric mesh and lay it over top of the wool. And we can start to wet down our wool. So you want to go slow with the water. You want the wool to be soaked through all the way, but you don't want the wool to be sitting in a puddle of water either. So start slowly adding the water. You can use your hands to push the water through. I like to start in the middle and work my way out with my hands. And then add some more water. You want the wool to be nice and soaked and laying flat. Sometimes the edges are harder to get soaked, so you gotta spray some right on the edge. And then you can use your hands and keep working the water through the wool. And once your wool is completely soaked through, if you're using a soap bar, I like to just rub it over the fabric mesh a little bit just to put on a little bit extra soap. It kind of helps move my hands across the mesh. It's a little bit slipperier. And then you can start gently moving your hands across the top of your wool. You want to start with slow agitation and increase the agitation slowly. If you are using wool with a design on it, if you laid out a nice pretty design with your wool, you want to make sure to be careful and not disturb the design, so you want to start out slow. I've increased the video here, so I'm definitely going slower than this. But you can just start to rub your hands all over the wool. Every once in a while, you can pick up your mesh and make sure it's not sticking to the wool. And keep felting it for a little while, and then we will start the rolling process of felting. So you take your foam roller here and roll it up with your bubble wrap, the wool, and the fabric mesh. And then we'll roll this whole thing up into a towel. I just use a hand towel because I'm working with a small piece. You can use a bath towel tool too if you fold it in half. So I'm going to roll this up in the towel. And then we're going to do sets of 25 rolls. So this is the first set. So we're going to roll it 25 times. And I didn't video the other sets of rolls, just the beginning where we turn. So we're going to do a quarter turn, roll 25 times. and then you'll do a third set, and then a fourth set. So you turn it 3 times in total and roll it 100 times. This last set I did video, and then we're going to unroll after a total of 100 rolls. We're going to check out our piece, pull the mesh off here, make sure it's not sticking, and then we're going to rotate it and re-roll another 100 times following the same method as the first time. So you roll in sets of 25. So roll 25, turn, 25, turn, 25, turn, 25. Then we unroll, and we're going to flip it over this time and roll again another 100 times. Once you roll 100, unroll again, and we will rotate and roll 100 times again for the final roll. After you get done with this one, you should have a total of 400 rolls. Then we can unroll everything, set the roller to the side, and we're going to do what's called a pinch test. So you want to pinch your wool, and if it feels like one piece and not separate fibers pulling apart, then you've rolled it enough. So we're actually going to felt it again with our hands. I like to do this a final time before we go on to the final process. So you can add a little bit more soap and a little bit more water if you need to, and then just felt it with your hands again. You can have more agitation this time, moving your hands faster across the piece. And then I'll do a pinch test again, and it should feel like a solid piece of fabric now. So we're going to go into our final process. So this is called fulling, not felting, fulling. So fulling is the process of shrinking the wool down and finishing the wet felting process. So this is more aggressive on the wool, and it will start to shrink as you roll it. So I like to use a small roller. If your roller's not small enough, there's other processes for fulling. There's a process called throwing, where you actually pick up your wool and throw it against the table. It's usually done in repetitions of 30, and you'll start to see the wool shrinking down as it will have some wrinkles across the wool. So I like to roll from each side, kind of like we did with the felting process. We roll on the different sides. We rotated it, flipped it over. So I do this again and again for a little while. And then I'm going to full it more aggressively. So I actually roll it up on itself. I'm going to roll it up really tightly. I usually focus on one section at a time and split it up like into thirds. So I roll one spot really tight, and then I'll roll it between my hands. And you can also roll it on top of the table if you prefer, instead of in between your hands. And I'll roll it until it starts to kind of unravel. And then you can unroll it, and you can see how much it shrunk just in that one time. And then re-roll it up, focusing on another area really tightly. And then just repeat this process, do the same thing, rotate it, flip it over, do it from all angles until your wool has shrunk down. You should really start to be able to see the wrinkles. It usually wrinkles, and you can see visible kind of wrinkles or waves in your wool fabric. So keep repeating this process for a little while until you've folded it from all angles. And you can also work on specific areas like the corners. If they're sticking out too much, you can roll it up on itself, roll it back and forth. So that is all the processes of felting. Now you want to make sure you rinse it out thoroughly and set it out to dry. Well, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Happy felting!